Your waiting room is off. Perfect. Good morning, everyone. If you're joining us from Ontario, good afternoon. If you're joining us from Europe, I'm just gonna make my screen a little bit bigger so I can see everyone. Hello. Wonderful. See a few familiar faces already from our main Flex cohort. Very nice to see you. Who do I see coming on there? Oh, I see Kristen and Lisa, Katja, hello. Patrick, nice to see you. There we are. Excellent. We are a big group today. So we're just going to give folks a couple more moments to join the room, get settled, get connected to audio. My name is Stephanie Draker, and I'm going to be supporting you and our guest speakers on Zoom today. As you joined, you might have noticed there was a notification saying that there is live streaming happening. Just so you know, this is not being live streamed via Facebook or YouTube or anywhere else. It's actually just our closed captioning service. So if you got that message, just know that near the top left of your screen, there's an option to turn on a transcript if that helps you follow along. Excellent. Perfect.
Although I don't know how it's going to work with all the foreign accents. That will be interesting.
We'll see. I mean, the Otter I find is sometimes a little bit more accurate than the Zoom transcript, but you know what? Let's see. We'll get them to compete, and we'll see what happens.
It's AI, yes, and normally it should get used to the way we speak. So if you see really odd things, don't be too alarmed. And it's a good reminder for speakers and presenters to slow down as well.
Yes,
we've got time. Yes, yeah.
Excellent. Yeah. Great. Well, I see that at least everybody who's in the room now has been able to connect to audio and looks fairly settled. So why don't I take a moment just to go through some of our housekeeping notes. So welcome, everyone. So as you joined, you were likely set to mute, and we'll just kindly ask that you remain on mute and until we get to the question and answer period. If you do have questions, though, after I go through our first few set of background slides, I will be monitoring the chat. So if questions come up along the way, you can certainly type them in there, and I'll try to keep track. Just a note on video or cameras, if you're able to keep your video on during the session, that would be greatly appreciated. We know it's not always possible, but certainly if you can, that would be great. I know that we're not your only Zoom meeting this week. We might not be your only Zoom meeting today, but we do appreciate the level of connection that being able to see everyone in the space, you know, albeit in little rectangles, that level of connection that it does present. So if you can, you know, please do. One option I might suggest, this is actually something that Fanny introduced to me. You might experiment with the hide self-view option that you can find in the top right corner of the Zoom screen under view. And it will, you know, if seeing your face on screen is a distraction, it'll hide that for you. Just know that we can still see you. But you might try that out, maybe this session, maybe another one, just as another option. A reminder that this session is being recorded, and we will share a summary on our channels after the fact. And I already talked a little bit about the closed captioning earlier, so it's available to you through the auto drop down near the top left of the screen, or we do have the Zoom one activated at the bottom if that is helpful to you. And just because we are coming together today from different regions, different organizations, as a means of, you know, potentially inviting connections through the chat or for the networking period that we have later. If you'd like to change your name, display name to also include your organization, and maybe where you're coming from, as well as your pronouns if you'd like, you can certainly do so. And in fact, if you'd like, through the chat, since we are coming from many different regions today, certainly feel free to introduce yourself and let us know where you're joining us from. It's always nice that, we do have this opportunity to connect with people from so many different places, including our friends and colleagues from Europe today as well. Yeah, afternoon to them. So we have a full agenda today. We have a few more background slides to go through before we turn things over to our guest speakers, who are going to start us off with some brief presentations on their organizations and the collaborative work that they do. Then we're going to be moving on to a conversation around some big questions around collaboration and collaborative practices before opening things up for Q&A from the participants, and then rounding that off with some concluding insights. And we've saved the last 20 minutes or so of the session for networking, for those who would like to, excuse me, stay on and either continue to get to know our guests, maybe continue to get to know one another, use this as an opportunity to exchange contact information with somebody that you might have met through this session, or even an opportunity just to say hello, a little more in-depth hello to someone that maybe you haven't seen in a while. So a little bit more detail on that a little bit later on. So I hope we have a good sense of what we're up to today. So as I mentioned earlier, my name is Stephanie Draker. I am the program manager with Work and Culture, and I am the project lead on the festival's Learning Exchange Program, or FLEX, as we've nicknamed it. For those of you who are not familiar with Work and Culture, or maybe mainly know us through our very popular job board, we do a lot more than that. We're a nonprofit art service organization focused on supporting the career development of people who work in the arts. And we span across all disciplines, all types of organizations that make up the cultural workforce. We work with artists and arts administrators alike, and we develop resources, training initiatives like this. We do research and host a range of professional development resources through our website that I would invite you to check out. Our focus is on Ontario, which has given us ample opportunity to connect with people across many different traditional territories. And through virtual delivery, we've been able to reach even further, especially over the past couple of years, spanning across Canada and beyond, which has been exciting. However, our offices and our core team for the Work and Culture team are located in Toronto, or Toronto, which is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. And we're grateful to have the opportunity to connect and work on this land in any form, be it virtually for now, and hopefully in person again soon. There's light at the end of the tunnel, I think, especially starting this week. So, fingers crossed. And just a little bit more information about FLEX. So this is a pilot project and program that is being supported by Canadian Heritage and by our delivery and advisory partners at the City of Toronto, City of Greater Sudbury, Ontario Culture Days, Kingston Arts Council, and the Ottawa Festivals Network. And the project itself was inspired directly by the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic on arts and heritage festivals specifically, and also by needs expressed by this community to become more effective collaborators and learn more effective collaborative practices. So, in order to advance, and enrich work that was already being done, but also very much in light of what challenges were presented by the pandemic, and in effort to explore opportunities for that short to kind of medium term period beyond the pandemic as we emerge from that. We have a cohort of 15 festivals who applied and were accepted to participate in a multi-session intensive group training experience. And they are represented on the call today. And they'll be with us for the next few months. But as part of this programming and in effort to try to spread the knowledge a little bit further and share the resources and really bring all the existing networks to bear for other folks, we also identified these spotlight sessions as an opportunity to bring together the main cohort, but also their colleagues, peers, and other stakeholders that might work alongside festivals, so that we can just increase the level of discussion that is out there. So that's what really brings us all together today. And I think on that note, I will turn things over to Fanny to talk a little bit about the format of the program.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yes, I'm Fanny Martin. I've been programming and producing this program alongside Stephanie. I run a company called Art of Festivals, which aims to bring more arts into everyday life and more life into the art sector. That's what we're doing today, more life into our working day. I hope that we're going to have a session full of fun bits and surprises and learning. Just a word about how to put where this session fits within the full program. So indeed, we have a cohort of festivals who have applied to come together and to think about their collaborative strategies. And they will be meeting in different types of formats. So core is where we look into a bit of theory, and then we have artist-led workshops to practice all these skills and new ideas. We're going to have location-specific sessions so that festivals can network intensively also with their local decision makers. And then we're going to have more sessions that we leave up to whatever emerges, whatever needs and opportunities are going to come up. So we call them the drop-in sessions, and we're going to have, possibly we could do things that are based on disciplines or transdisciplinary collaborations. So that's to be determined, and that's what we try to do with that kind of programming, is to really let things happen. So everything that we do today is work in progress. It's always a bit experimental in the sense that we're trying things out with formats, and we will be asking you for your feedback afterwards. It's really important because we cannot guess how it is for you. And the more you tell us what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what more you want, the more we can adjust and cater to your needs. So quickly here, and I think we can come back to this right at the end as well. We're working across 3 large themes, collaborating with peers, which we're looking at today in this spotlight. And we've put 2 other dates here for your diaries. The next spotlight, open to everybody who wants to come, is about collaborating with artists, 16th of March, same timings, and then collaborating with society, 13th of April, again, 10 to 12 EST. So let's get cracking with our guests. We've got a nice mugshot spreads. So these are the people who are going to be hosting the conversation today. So you've met Stephanie and myself already. I'm not going to go into biographies of our guests because you can find these on the Eventbrite page, online, etc. I just wanted to say a little bit about why they're here and in fact, why, how I met them. And because the 3 people we have invited today to get stuck into this topic of collaborating with peers. Well, let's start with Benoit, who is the coordinator of Next Festival. Next Festival is a festival I had the great pleasure to attend in November 2019. I was there because I was part of a cohort myself for a program called Festival Atelier, organized by the Festival Academy, which is an international network and professional development series of programs for festival makers. And so this is when I met Benoit and several people from his team at large, and Benoit is going to talk about what the team actually means in their case. But I had so many questions for them, that's, you know, how do you work together? How do you work across 6 structures? How do you work across a border and across 2 languages? And all these questions. So I just really wanted to have this opportunity to share this, frankly, extraordinary setup with more people, because I think there's so much to be analyzed, you know, and to be carried over from this really ambitious collaborative structure. Next, we're going to hear from Mike, who is going to talk about FiraTàrrega. And I've met Mike in November 2021. So pre-pandemic, went to Belgium and met Benoit, and then nothing. And then a couple of months ago, I went to Spain because I'm a member of IETM, which is a network for contemporary performing arts, of which Mike is also a member of, is related to it. And so we happen to be in the same place at the same time, because we're members of the same network. And this is one of the things that we're going to touch upon as well today, the role of networks, professional networks, informal networks, all sorts of networks in this connections. How do we connect between peers? And lots of ways, but networks are pretty good. And how do you make them work for you is another question. So Mike will talk about FiraTàrrega, which is a festival and marketplace for outdoor arts in Catalonia. And then we have Clayton, who is, hello Clayton, who is our local arts manager, arts leader, artist, and say our local, because what we're doing with this series of spotlights, the same format will be followed through for the 2 others. We have international guests talking about experiences that happen in different contexts, and we know that it's different, right? The funding structures are different, the histories are different, etc. And so every time we're going to have a local translator, someone who's here to find what is immediately applicable to our context in Ontario. Like what can we take, what nuggets can we take from these conversations? And so Clayton also has tons of networks and various like peer structures experience. We met because we were part of a network. We met at the first mass culture launch event, which was back in 2019, maybe, time is blurry. And there's lots of other networks we're connected through, like Spark and others, and yourself have a list of many on your biography, on your CV. So there's really a lot here, a lot of networks that, you know, funnily enough, haven't crossed yet, because this is the first time that these 3 individuals are brought together. And this is also what we're looking forward to see, what will be the sparks that will come from these conversations. So let's move on. Let's have just a round of short presentations from Benoit, Mike, and then Clayton to give you more context about where they're coming from. Like, what is this festival structure, these collaborative networks, etc., that they are experts in. Then we'll have a bit of a panel discussion to tease out, you know, a few more of these themes. And then questions, you know, question answers. So don't hesitate at any point to stick things in the chat, everything that makes you react, questions you want to bring for further. The chat is there for your, you know, stream of consciousness and to exchange with each other, because this is also a networking session. So you are here to see each other across the room and to find people who are interested in the same values, the same principles, the same ambitious projects as you are. All right, Benoit, tell us more about Next.
Hello, everybody, and thank you very much for this invitation. So my name is Benoit Geers. I'm the coordinator of the Next Festival. But first of all, I want to say that I'm not alone here for the Next Festival. I'm here with 2 of my dear colleagues. One of them is Romaric Dory, general manager of Le Phoenix, scène nationale, national scene in Valenciennes, in France, which is one of the core partners of the festival. So hello, Romaric. And Romaric, I invite you to interrupt me and complete me and participate for next whenever you feel like it. And the same thing for Meike Harmsen, which is the new performing arts programmer of the Theater of Kortrijk, also a core partner of the festival Next, and which is what is very nice about Meike's presence here today is that she just started like yesterday, I think. So she's brand new, and we are only getting to know each other at this stage. So I will so also Meike, if you feel like it, join us in the discussion. I will share my screen. Hopefully this will. Just a second. Okay, we should be there. Do you see the slide?
All good. We're
okay.
on.
Okay, so I have 7 minutes. I already took like 3, I guess. So I will go a bit fast. Okay, the next festival is a festival in and around this Belgian French region, which is the Eurometropolis. The Eurometropolis is a political entity created by 14 political levels, and in order to take away the border barrier and the disadvantages of being a border a region. So it was created in 2008, and that was also the time when 5 French and Belgian partners started. Next, I'm not going into the details of this, but so both things were created next to one another. We were not partners in the beginning. Now there's some kind of partnership, but the next festival is not not created by the Eurometropolis, but by these 5 core partners. These partners today are le Phoenix in Valenciennes, Espace Pasolini in Valenciennes, also a working residency place. Another Scène Nationale in Lille is La Rose des Vents, and then an art center in Kortrijk, which is Buda, mainly a working and residency place for contemporary performing arts, and the Theater of Kortrijk. So we created this festival in this Eurometropolis region of more than 2 million people. But again, the festival has developed and is not only is not limited to this Eurometropolis, but also travels around it. I'm going a bit fast. It was created in 2008 and replaced 3 festivals that existed, some for quite some time, others not that long. But the fact that these festivals organized by those core partners were replaced by the festival Next showed from the beginning the ambition to create really a new and international festival together, in order to bring it at a new level, and have some goals, objectives, some ambitions that the partners and the individual festivals could not have on their own. So here we see the co-organizing partners. La Maison de la Couture de Tournai just had to, we will get back to this, had to leave the core partnership and has become an associated partner. And then the other 5 houses which lead, so co-organize the festival. Day 5 are really the equal and horizontal partners that pilot, that lead and direct and manage the festival, and I try to coordinate that collaboration. So I work for all 5 of them. So I have 5 bosses, which is nice. One festival, one mission, one program, made together, one communication, one ticketing, one budget. Very, very fast after 2008, if we had the experience of like 4 years of collaborating, we said, well, if we want to cover the festival for the Eurometropolis and Valenciennes, we will need to create new partnerships in this festival. And that's why from 2011, 2012 on, we created like a second circle of partners, which we are called the associated partners, which are sometimes big stages, also sometimes smaller cultural places, but in this broader region, which makes the festival today a festival organized by some 25 partners in some 20 cities for some 40 productions titles per year. Every edition is in November, 3 weeks, 3 weekends. So 40 productions, 80 showings. And what we do is we want to present new artistic work, present things that can not presented otherwise in this region, also support the artistic creation, the support of artists. So this whole pillar is very important, the presentation and supporting of artistic creation and on an international level. On the one hand, on the other hand, important pillar, let's say, for the festival is to make communities gather and make them discover the other region, the other cities, the other houses, the other artists, publics, organizations. So mingle the French and the Belgian spectators and teams and artists in this one festival. In this international context. So 4 pillars: support and presentation of new generation, new tendencies, presentation of leading production and artist program on the cross-border region, special focuses and audience participation and public mobility. So every year we organize like 40 festival buses that take the people from the one city and one theater to another. Very fast, some key figures since 2008, 14 editions, 150,000 spectators, 430 shows. So co-productions also, every year an average of 15 shows are co-produced. There's always some premieres, some 7, 8 world premieres per edition. Some 15 national premieres per edition. Like I said, the support of artists' creation is very important, and the fact that the houses in Next, the partners in Next have these missions makes that artists can also come and reside to create in the Eurometropolis. We translate, so all the showings are subtitled, which is related to the fact that we want to see this one festival as one program, inviting one big audience, no matter which language they speak, because we are in a bilingual region, Dutch and French, so all the showings are translated. We organize professional days. We have a special program for European youngsters, and also organize loads of different formats to a broad public of citizens, researchers, students, and so on, about about citizenship and about the other, mainly. Governance-wise, the next festival is this cooperation of 5 core partners and some 20 associated partners. And we created 2 associations, one in Belgium and one in France, which gather the 5 core partners. So my board are the 5 core partners for the 2 associations in France and in Belgium. The reason why we still have 2 is because legally we cannot apply for financing if we don't have an organization in the region where we apply for financing. Next is a very dense and intense cooperation model. So we have different working groups, the artistic program, communication, ticketing, audience development, administration, and management. So at the heart of the festival is the programmation. And really, trust me, we are not talking about a collage of showings in one brochure. The real challenge of Next is creating this program together, this artistic program together with all the artistic directors of the different houses. Same thing with communication. It's one communication organized and delivered by all the communication people from all the core partners, and so on and so on. So here you see another kind of structure of the cooperation model. So the 2 associations, the different working groups, the core partners, and the coordination, which are at any moment related. Some ideas about the financing of Next and how it is structured. Next has a financing on the Belgian side by Flanders of 300,000, about the same amount on the French side, and there's some other historically grown financing via different partners individually. So we've constructed a common budget out of these financing in order to collaborate and cooperate in this in the festival. So maybe to close off, there's many advantages. It's a real choice to work like this. It's a lot of work to cooperate. We all know this. But one of the big advantages in this kind of constellation is that if we take all the financing we have for the festival Next, and we take the full output of the festival Next, we see that we can reconvert the full financing we have for the festival into artistic costs, and this is quite unique and efficient, and it is only because the partners very generously and without billing someone engage their whole infrastructure and their teams and their means and expertise into this festival. So today it's even up to 2 million with a financing of about 800,000 a year. We realize this. I hope it's a bit clear what I'm saying. So yeah, we had an FA award in 2015 because we were so good. I have just to close off a small movie. I'm going to stop sharing now. I hope I was a bit clear. It's a very short time. Romaric or Make-it, do you want to add something?
And we'll come back to this later as well, but no, I think that was fantastic. We're going to have Mike. This is context, right? We're just talking about where you're coming from. We're going to go deeper into all these layers. What we want to do today, especially, is to find what is relevant, what is applicable, what can Ontario festivals take for themselves, and that's what we're going to analyze in a little bit. So thank you so much. I did spot myself in the after movie because that's the year I was there, and so great to see happy faces and dancers and stages and audiences. So thanks for that, because we're craving performing arts at the moment in Ontario. Excuse me. Let's hear from Mike. But people in the room, participants, all your questions, all your comments, all the clarification that you may have, or new ideas that these presentations are sparking, do keep them coming in the chat. We've got stuff happening, and then we'll have a dialogue shortly after we hear from Mike.
Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Fanny, for inviting me. It's true, as you were saying before, Fanny, that this is actually the result of peering. We met, we shared a session together, and from the proactiveness of Fanny, contacting me just later and saying, well, would you like to join this session? My curiosity of joining and being in Toronto, being in Canada now, online, somebody. So here I am. I'm going to share as well my presentation. My name is Mike Ribalta. I am the coordinator of the performing arts market of FiraTàrrega. With my presentation, what more or less I want to do is to tell you what it is, where we are, and what we do. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me see if I share it in the proper. I'll have to go back. Sorry for a second. We were doing tests and I went to, just give me a second. Here I am. And now I'll be ready. Yes, can you see it?
Yeah, perfect.
Yes.
And you can go full screen if you want.
Yes, I'll try to do that.
This is fine too.
Yes, no, because the thing is,
We present.
Yeah, you know what? I have as I have all the information of the screen here. This is what. Sorry for that.
Oh, it's okay. Zoom.
Yes.
Stephanie and I are producing things, and that's why we're not chatting. Okay.
Right, collaborating with peers, this is it. FiraTàrrega, a little bit of explanation. We are a public organization which works to activate Catalan performing arts creation and professional artistic exchange, both nationally and internationally. And we pay a special attention to street arts and projects designed to involve the citizenry in public space. You can see here some values, and our mission is to foster and guide strategic creation processes, to contribute to strengthening the sector and nourish the creative talent market, and also to bring performing arts to the citizenry and territory. For us, citizens are very important in our mission. We want to strive cultural democratization, inclusion, equality, accessibility, all these values that you can see here. A little bit, where is FiraTàrrega? So you can locate us in Europe, in Spain, in Catalonia, which is in the northeast. And there, Tàrrega is basically 115 kilometers west of Barcelona. And this is Tàrrega. Tàrrega is organizing a festival, just so that you have a little bit of an image. Tàrrega is a community of 19,000 inhabitants, 19, and this city transforms into a completely different scenario for 4 days in the year. This is where the festival happens, and we have around 100,000 visitors coming when COVID allows. Tàrrega is a city of services and commerce. It's in the rural region of Lleida. So all of you that make events in rural areas, that is a very interesting and very important. You know, when we peer in rural areas, we have to do it with our citizens. We have 1 theater, 2 hotels, 1 train station, and a community that is completely transformed. Next dates, 8 to 11 September 2022. As I was saying, Tàrrega is a space for accompaniment, research, innovation. So we place our expertise and knowledge in the performing arts, in the outdoors and public space. And we put this expertise at disposal of the creators and the professionals. We want to be a space for creative links with the agents, citizenship. We want to generate places for confluence, for complicity. We want to share synergy for the benefit of the stage creation and the individual and the collective development of the community. I don't know what this is. That is the website, which I was not expecting to put here in the slides. So, yeah. Right, so what we are is a fair and a festival, which means as a fair, we are a professional meeting point, and we have matchmaking activities throughout the year. So we are not only working the 4 days, we work 365 days a year to connect artists, to connect promoters. We want to do person to person. We want to make connections business to business. We have the main meeting in September. And during this main meeting as well, we have professional activities and formal and informal gatherings. The idea of our collaboration with peers is more active. Us as an organization have collaborations, but also us facilitate the engagement and cooperation of third parties. This is as a meeting point, but as a festival, we also are an annual festival where we have more than 250 performances of 50 companies during 4 days. So it's massive. We take the whole city. That's the city that has 1 theater, and we change it into a big theater of 25 different venues to perform. Half of the program is productions and creations that we produce by emerging artists and by strong artists, and this is part of our project. We have an actual project that is called Territori Creatiu, which is a space for accompaniment, research, innovation, and co-production. I want to finish my presentation with some images to illustrate this presentation. This is Tàrrega. This is the Performing Arts Market and Meeting, classical, with stands. And it's something that some people don't like, but we still have to do it because companies want to have this meeting point. Of course, we talk, we share knowledge, speed meetings, reunions, the classical. But then when you go out in the streets, you can have aerial dance in the parish church. You can have dance in the middle of the square. The cars are not allowed because audiences sit on the streets. And we can have contemporary creations of circus, outdoor art, in national and international. This is a fabulous Korean creator that lives, actually, I think he lives in France or in Belgium, and they came to the festival. So this is, now I finished, this is in short what we are, what we do. I hope it was clear, and I stay at your disposal. If anyone wants more information or wants to know more, I'm going to put my email in the chat, and I'm at your disposal. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Mike. Yes, there's tons to explore in all of this. And also Mike, Benoit and Benoit's colleagues will be there for the networking at the end of the session. So if you want to ask specific questions or make a link before you do send that email, that's all there for you. Let's hear from Clayton to have the Ontario perspective. So both, your own experience in collaborating with peers, and then what you're starting to hear, like threads you would like to perhaps put together. Here you are spotlit.
Thank you so much. So I don't have slides to present today. I'm going to just kind of speak from the heart and respond to things and try to synthesize data as best I can, which is the role I've been invited to play. So my name is Clayton Windatt, and I'm happy to see some familiar faces in this group. I'm also really happy to see a lot of new people that I've never met before, and so honored to be presenting alongside of such exceptional and talented people. I am a mixed blood Métis First Nations and settler person living here in Sturgeon Falls, Ontario, which is a part of West Nipissing, which Sturgeon Falls is about, a 3,000 population farming community on the highway between two relatively small urban centers, which, relative compared to, millions of populations. But in the end, Sudbury and North Bay are sort of like my cities that I live between. And those cities are in no way, shape considered to be like large scale, but they're awesome. And in the end, living in rural communities gives a really unique and awesome perspective, especially when you work in a national capacity, which I do. My day job is working as the executive director of ARCA, which is the Artist Run Centers and Collectives Conference. And that's all of the galleries and collectives and festivals that identify as being run by artists or identify with artist run culture. So being in a smaller community, it sort of allows me to not get caught up too much in the local and sort of keep a perspective without getting bogged down into a lot of the politics and actions of, say, like New York or Toronto or something, right? Like these really big spaces that there's so much happening just on the ground in those regions that there's actually, it's hard to see things outside of the region itself. And when I think about what we've discussed and what's been happening, I really enjoy, Mike and Benoit's perspectives and showing the layers of collaboration, the networking that are taking place, and the connections that sort of lead to consensus building to make things happen at larger levels. So in other words, like acknowledging individual capacity and how some things can be done if those capacities are combined, as opposed to looking at each other as competition. And I say that because I feel that there's a lot of systems in Canada and Ontario that have those kind of structures of that, where we're encouraged to collaborate, but we're also encouraged to sort of compete for funding. So we can work together, and yet there's sort of structural aspects to the way that the arts funding works that kind of go against collaboration in some ways. And obviously if you're working professionally, you find how to navigate that and make it work for you. And it's not as rigid as maybe I'm explaining it, but I'm definitely trying to think about how to shift towards those optimisms that I'm seeing by collaboration, and how to kind of share those through lines. And I think it comes down to, for me, finding working relationships that are healthy and make sense. So in other words, collaboration needs to be like very consensual. It needs to have it needs to make a lot of sense and have mutual respect and mutual understanding and mutual benefits really clear for all parties, so that the comfort level of those working relationships can be there. And you know, I think about sort of, you know, and I'll think about this more and try to summarize it a little bit at the end, as was explained. But you know, like I think about like that there's a lot of ideas, especially right now with funding systems, where there's money to sort of be imagining these collaborations, and I love keeping it at a collaborative level instead of talking about like merging, because we often hear how festivals or arts organizations should collapse and roll into each other, that, you know, it would run better if there were, you know, less competing elements, and it would run better in some ways, but it would also lose autonomy, and some of the ideas that some of the organizations that are being discussed in that context are often, there's a lot of fear of like what people lose when they start, you know, giving up things and collaborating. So I mean, for me, all of the best collaborations that have taken place have all been very relational. I appreciated very much Fanny's introduction of sort of saying how this came to be, and talking about the organic process of meeting people and seeing the connections and wanting to make those connections make more sense. I'll also celebrate the fact that we've had meetings prior to this presentation. So this is not the first time that Benoit and Mike and Fanny and I have all met to discuss how this would go. And I think that that's a really important aspect to you know, sort of trying to understand each other, because without the time and effort needed to build that understanding between parties, it's almost impossible to say whether these things make sense. They might make sense to Fanny, but if this is the first time I was meeting or even hearing about any of these other works, why would it make sense to me? This would be me responding to it for the first time. So having a little bit of that extra time and space as a structure was really valuable. I also think about when we're talking about collaborations and the ideas of like formalizing associations, and that really stood out to me, because ARCA is the federal group that has 10 association bodies as its that makes up the federal body. Those associations are both representation based and region based. So in Ontario, it's ARCO, the Artist Run Centers and Collectives of Ontario, and the idea of so that association in Ontario has various member organizations, which are artist run centers that are, you know, paying membership fees and getting membership benefits, but then those centers have artists and individuals as their members. So if you look at the sort of layers of membership bureaucracy, is sort of like, you know, there's people, and then there's organizations, and then there's associations, and then there's associations, and then there's associations. It could just keep going, right? But the power that comes from that hierarchy isn't just the idea of like efficiency in communication, or the ideas around like how to support each other in, you know, capacity building. It's accessing a network that accesses larger networks. And when you know, especially when I started to think, when we were first speaking today about how, like, what the power of networking does, I thought very much about how, you know, like, people find out what each other are doing through networks, and it's really all that the network has to do, because the enthusiasm towards what each other are doing leads to, you know, developing relationships further. So by just sharing, we find out what you know someone else is doing. That could either be something very enthusiastic, or something where it's like, that doesn't fit in the spectrum of what I'm working towards, and those relationships will get pursued in that manner, right? So, like, you know, you're doing something awesome, I want to be part of it, I pursue that. Maybe it's not interesting, my involvement, so it doesn't work, you know, my feelings are hurt, but at the same time, you know, someone probably isn't going to just pursue one person and one collaboration. That method of continuously looking leads to people where it becomes reciprocal, where the person who is pursued wants to work with the person who is pursuing. And either way, whether it's like very mutual at the beginning or whether it's one-sided, it ends up that eventually the collaboration starts to happen. And all it takes is that sharing of information and the effective communication to happen. So I'm definitely going to take some time to think about synthesizing this information into a more of a moving forward message. But where I'm at right now is that like I really think about how to activate communities better through collaboration, and how to set out really healthy understandings of relationships between organizations that are both considering what's working in a non-tangible way and then more transactional. Like I really loved how Benoit, you were able to present sort of like very clearly why different people were holding positions of power within those hierarchies, and how that made sense financially. And it wasn't like people coming up with ways, like coming up with roles for no good reason. It was like, no, this is because of it's associated with this, and here's this. And then witnessing a budget of almost $2 million dollars, and then seeing 55% of the budget going to the artists. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that in Canada. I know that sounds strange, but I can guarantee that the majority of the work I do, the amount that the artists actually get is really low. So when I think about how the collaboration could actually lead to higher outputs to the artists themselves, that's the part of that story beyond everything that gets me very excited and motivated to try to collaborate better. So
thanks
Fanny,
so much, Clayton. Yes, that's great segue, because yes, what we wanted to do with the presentations at the start is to show a result of intense and well set up collaborations, like what can be achieved when all the the iceberg under the sea that's Mike and Benoit have shown us a glimpse of, like when all of this is in place, then we have these beautiful festivals, co-productions, premieres, etc. We know it's a lot of work, and we're going to have everybody back on the Spotlight feature, because we also have Romaric and Mika, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, and we want to bring you in because this is about teamwork. This is about people coming in with different levels of like history, and I'm going to add Mika as well, and Romaric as well for Stephanie. Yes, because there's a great question from Jane. Thank you, Jane, for being a good plant in the room with intelligent questions, so we can bounce. And this idea of how do you start a collaboration? What would be your shared values, purposes, and how do you set it right, especially so that you can absorb new collaborators? So what would be, I mean, Mika, for example, you've just started, not to put you on the spot, but how does that feel for you to come in a structure like Next? Well, and you're not just Next, you are, I can't pronounce the name of your theater, I'm afraid. I can try, Schouwburg, Kortrijk.
Perfect. Schouwburg. Yeah, I even have another accent than the people who live over here, because I'm Dutch and we're in Belgium over here. So I say Schouwburg, but Benoit won't like that. And
oh, no, I love it. It's very good.
Yes, I had 2 meetings already with the Next team, and this was the programmation team. And for me, I think this is a very interesting way of curating a festival together based on consent. So because of course, it's only 2 meetings, and it's also in French, which I'm still learning. So, but I think it was a very interesting experience now already to have all these different people building a festival together and thinking about, okay, what should beware, for example, thinking about cross-border programs, that maybe things that are over here very known are very interesting to present on the other side of the border. And yeah, many things come up.
Yeah, maybe Romaric, you could also let us know, like you must have seen lots of people going through the festival and the teams, etc. So how does that work for people to really align with, okay, this is next, and how do they separate? This is what we do for our respective structure, and is there a next culture when you're working together on the festival?
Yes, you're right. I think it's an intercultural project, and that's the strong point of next festival, because nowadays there is some nationalistic dangers to close the borders. So we are working on a new cooperation project. It's very new because when we are together, we are stronger, and artistically and with organization, and it helps people in each teams to be open-minded to new ways of working, of sharing, and it's very important.
Yeah.
Sorry, there was one thing, what I was thinking, starting to get to know the structure better, is that in a way it is it's practicing encountering in the core of the festival itself, and then in the end this is also what happens in the program together with the audience.
Yeah. So always thinking about the plurality and about this complexity, people you don't even know yet, people who you can't assume what these other people, be them audiences or the other teams, you can't just assume that they know what you know or that they want what you want. Yeah, and Jane's question is about methodology. I remember that I asked you a lot of questions to the whole next team when I was there, like, how do you work together? Do you have a protocol? Do you have etc.? And if I remember correctly, the answer was not really. Like, there is a level of improvisation, and maybe Mike and Clayton, you can also comment on this.
So I will say that in my experiences, and I witnessed when we discussed, I think that there were aspects of this that were touched upon as well. But I'll say Jane Marsland is like an extremely awesome consultant, and I consider her to be someone who I've learned a lot from over the years. So when I saw that question pop up, I was like, oh, this is one of those ones where you're like, I have to actually respond from like a place of like knowing what I'm talking about. No pressure. But I think about consensus building, and I know that it's not always the best way to engage in things. I've had a lot of pushback, because even when you say we're going to come together to talk about this, there are going to be people in the room that will say, yeah, but you're the one that came up with that, or it's always from a perspective. But the key to consensus building is entering into agreements with good faith. So the idea is that, yes, someone else might have come up with something or made an assumption, and that might need to get worked out. But if, in the end, if you're coming to the meeting, it means that you want to be part of something, at which point that's enough to work on. So we can get past any assumptions that people have made, if the willingness to work together is there. And I think that that's my key for collaboration, is to try to build a consensus as early as possible, because sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes you have like resources that are for a dedicated thing, and you have to do what you've agreed to do, and there's going to be less consensus that can be built there. But if you're at an idea phase and there's no resources, that's the best place to start building a big plan, because then once you're all aligned, the resources they'll come together.
Yeah, and Mike, you have something to say about this. You've raised your hand. I want to say to everybody else in the room, if you want to speak, instead of writing things in the chat, just raise your hand as well, and we'll get round to you. You can totally do that, especially people in the cohort, because we talked quite a bit about competition, collaboration, ground agreements, consensus, etc. So if things have percolated for you, it would be really great to hear as well what's emerging for you in the midst of these conversations. So Mike, yes, consensus, I think, is where we are.
I thank Clayton that he identified who Jane was, because the question was very, very thorough. And then you realize it's a question from a consultant. And me as a practitioner, sometimes I'm very shy when I hear the work, he shared, the methodology or the process, because as Clayton was saying, we sometimes the way we work, you say, where is the methodology? Actually, it's a lot of, I think the words that Clayton was using, it's true. When we talk about collaboration, we talk about consensus, about transparency, about clarity. In our case, and this happens a lot in Europe, and as it may happen to you as well, each other as well. And then before starting a collaboration, when you were saying, Jane, how to absorb them into the collaboration, you have to do it beforehand. You have to see if the aims are the same. It has to be a lot of transparency. What I do, what I look from, or what I look for from somebody. And then the moment we know that our aims are the same is the moment we start collaboration. It's I think that it's the previous work that you do, knowing and meeting the people in advance, and then share. The moment you see that you share the same goals is the moment where you say, let's collaborate, and let's do it, with the cards on the table. I want this. And then, of course, it's all about win-win. I'm sure it happens in the next festival. You were asking, one thing is what I do as an event, and the other thing is what can I put on the table and what can I get. This win-win, it's always part of this, even the methodology is to put the cards on the table, and then the moment we see that there is something that we can do to share and to learn and to gain from it is when you do the collaboration. I don't know if you feel the same, the other partners.
Yes, well, if I can. The same ambition, goals, like we said, value sharing also. It's very important to agree on this, and how one can contribute, and how one's expertise adds to the whole of the platform or the project. With Next, we took over the years the time to expand this partnership. Like I explained, we started with only 5 partners, also because we could find financing for it. We have to say it. This border, which is like a main theme in the cooperation we have. So how can we cross the borders or put them elsewhere and confront the disadvantages we live every day in this border region. And with European funding in 2008 for cross-cultural, cross-border cooperation, we were able to start this cooperation. This funding doesn't exist anymore, and we continued. But also this was an important leverage for us to say, let's go there. Also on a history of bilateral cooperation. So it was we were used to, but not on this level. And so main values, main goals, but then the way you do it, it's something you discover with the people around the table, because you are around the table, and it's how you speak to each other and how you open up for one another that you see how certain balances create and how things move on. So after 4 years, we were able to add, like I explained, the associated partners, and main incentive there was it has to be an opportunity for you. So we had associated partners which were there for one edition and were left for another year and then came back, and so this we have this like flexibility to add new partners, but really on a base of opportunity. So I don't know if...
Yeah, we have questions about conflicts and parallel discussion going on. I'm wondering about how, conflict is one thing, and perhaps it does arise in the course of this discovering how we're going to work together, but then it is resolved. But how do you continue to assess the value of the collaboration for all partners? How do you listen? How do you make space for people or partners to say, this is not quite working for me, this could work better? Especially, I mean, there may be a point of non-return where you've just left it too long and then it breaks down. Like, what's your experience in this? Do you have tips? Do you have horror stories? And same for the participants. If you want to add to this, please do come in the chat or raise your hand. Who would like to talk about, how do you feel when it's not working, for example? What would you do when you feel like for example, at Next, if one of the core partners is going a little bit sideways and not quite saying, but you can feel that they're not too happy with how it's going? What are your mechanisms?
Yeah, I think it's a constant redefinition about the festival. Every year we are sharing new questions and new values, and each time a partner is leaving, for example, it's questioning the whole organization, and we work on a new project each year. So I think it's the capacity of rebuild each year, a new thing with a new energy. It's very important, and not to leave a concept during 2, 3, 4 years, and after it's down. So it's very important, this, I think.
I think, Mike, you've worked on large European projects that are of that type as well, in the way that it's meant to run for 3, 5 years. And that is one way of conceiving these collaborations. Either it's refreshed or it has a start and an end, right?
Exactly. We've worked in 2 European projects that there were 4 partners, a very small project, and it was it was a meeting between peers that we already knew each other. So that knowledge before, and we did have some problems because we have to understand as well that we're talking, the collaboration is project, but it's people. And I'm sure you all know that when you put 4 people on the table, what you have is the personality types. And I think the coordination and the leader of the project, when we talk about these cooperation projects, has to know as well the types. Well, who do I have in front of me? I have the self-centered, I have the generous one, I have the consensus one, and then you play a little bit of a psychological role as well. And when you have a crisis, I know that person is the person that can put people together, that can put people at ease, and then you put them in place, and you play with the characters, because at the end is the people that we all understand that when we get together, we know what the project is, we know that the goal is, what we want to achieve, and then is the personal relation that works, and in that we learned how to deal with people. We really do have to learn the way to be generous, to be assertive, to be understanding, to listen, and to deal with that. And it's a very interesting part of the game. I think it's interesting. And when somebody was saying, you know, what happens when something is not working, if it's project-based, is, as Benoit was saying, it's reviewing, I'm sorry, Romaric was saying, is reviewing the project, and then there's a conflict, is something we were not expecting, so let's work on that and let's renew the agreement. When it's personal based, it's you have to deal with the person, and it's a very, very rich part of a collaboration process. You learn a lot from that, and you, from disagreement, you make your best friends for the long time. You know, I've done that, and we have to remember that we will all meet, you know, we'll meet again. So it's very good to be very assertive when we talk about collaboration, and it's the sometimes even discussions are and disagreements are the most interesting part of the processes, when you learn more.
Yeah, you learn more about yourself, you learn about others. Yes, Clayton.
Well, and I think that what Mike's just said is exactly what I was typing in the chat to a degree, like this idea of like, you know, the relationship will kind of, you'll end up learning how to say no to someone and not have it be a confrontation. And this is like a key aspect to, I think, a lot of things, especially as the subjects that are being addressed either in the arts or through our collaborations are things that were not topical, like they're very personal to many people involved. So it's not a subject we're just addressing. It can be like lived experiences, it could be culture, it could be lots of things that are very, you know, sacred and important to people that, you know, when it's being said no, it feels like you're saying no to something very important to them. But if the relationship is there, you know, having to say no to a friend and saying why, and sometimes that is like an act of care itself, right? Like the you know, the relationship, if you're so far apart that saying no is a fight, that you are already too far apart to have this collaboration work. And that's a key aspect where, you know, drifting apart, it happens. People find their own path, and usually when someone is going away, I'm all like, that they're on their path, you know, I'll encourage them, but I'll also kind of let them go. I'm not going to try to sink my claws in and drag them back in. That'd be terrifying. And I think about how some of this is also like a very fast story, and I'll keep it hypothetical because I don't need to make it a long and gossipy thing. But, you know, there was in a relationship, an event, you know, got canceled that I was involved with, and there were some accusations towards a committee that was running things of racism that took place. And there was a few people involved in the committee that I consider to be working partners and friends, and I reached out saying, if these accusations, which are anonymous right now, are actually talking about things that you've done, I'd like you to tell me, because I'm prepared to stand with you and go through whatever restorative justice process is necessary or whatever. You know, this is the idea of them being implicated in something that could possibly ruin their career. And I'm not trying to defend them. I'm saying that I'm prepared to stand with them and be a support structure to go through this, because it's also like these relationships, they're not just the when everything goes well. You see, like when things go wrong, you have to think about, you know, are you going to stand with this person? Obviously, if they're going to be continuously causing, you know, hateful actions, you know, that's the relationship's going to be over anyway, and I probably wouldn't align with them. But when something begins, how can you know, take things back and think about how you'd want to be treated, and try to make these relationships and spaces better. Like I've been very frustrated with how collaborations collapse because of whether insensitivity, ignorance, sometimes anger or hate, which those are the worst. But when that takes place, people just resign and leave. There's no healing, there's no work to make people try to understand why people thought the actions that were taking place are wrong. There's just, everyone runs out of the room and they just pretend the event never happened. And I think that there's a fragility in our environments that, you know, with healthier collaboration, with that kind of alignment with groups, when something goes wrong, The question is, how do we work together as a community to make it better? You know, we don't, you know, somebody makes a mistake. How can we make it that they learn from this and don't continue to do it? How can we address the root issues that are being explored? How can we address the structural problems that might have led to this point? All of it, right? Anyway, sorry to go all big, but
yeah,
but
no,
I really think
great.
it's important to talk about this in that kind of sense, being like, everyone, you know, in this group derives their livelihoods from these works. You know, it's more, it's, you know, obviously the people you work with are important to you.
Yes, and what Romaric shared in the chat, this idea of friends. I mean, we are peers is our theme today. We're talking about these professional friendships. Like, it's a special kind of friendship, you know, where we're not necessarily, you know, seeing each other all the time. It's different. It's not like your friend that you go for dinner with, for example. Like, it's people you work with, but there is this level of respect, trust, affinities, and then being able to say, like, you've crossed the line. But, you know, but I keep you in my boundaries, all these things that are, yeah, really emotional work. And that's how we talk about here as well. Like, it does require, yes, Clayton.
Just very fast, I'll also say, I didn't finish the story. The people I reached out to were not the people that were being accused. So they were actually really upset that I thought it could be them. So I also point that out, that it's like, they were like, what? You think it's me that did these things? Wow, thanks, Clayton. And I'm like, well, look at it on the bright side. This conversation was saying, if you need someone to talk to and you're the perpetrator of these problems, I will stand there and make sure you're getting the help you need, as opposed to like cutting you out of my network as this first conversation, right? But so, you know, try to look at it on the bright side. Don't just be like, you think that I'm this? Thanks. Anyway.
Yeah. And to bounce on this before Mike adds to this, because Khadija is asking about what training could I take? Conflict resolution is a good one, non-violent communication. You know, if you have other tips, you know, everybody, I see you nodding, so Mike, Clayton, Benoit, if you have tips about what kind of specific training you may take or books to read, that kind of stuff, because it's a wide topic. And it is something that we do train in all the time, how to host, you know, a group of people who have dissenting views, how to play that role of facilitating, how to maybe sometimes leave your own emotions a little bit to the side and deal with the needs that need to be met in the people who are in conflict with the situation. So yes, Mike.
No, what Khadija says is very interesting. It's true, because we don't tend, when we work together, we don't tend to do this sort of trainings. And sometimes, if you want to be involved in, or even lead these collaboration networks or collaboration projects, maybe it's very good to know. I'm very interested, and I follow sometimes this sort of, you know, as you were saying, finally, you're more articulated than me in that, you know, is how to deal with conflict. All these classical, how do you say that? You know, all these classical workshops, you know, and that it's true. The other thing that, referring to what you were saying as well, Fanny, and it's important that when we are involved in a project, you will help me with wording if I'm not using the correct ones, but you have to be emotionally attached to what you do. Of course, you have to defend it, but you don't have to be kidnapped for that. You know, it's not that thing that if we don't follow what I do, I'm going to leave, I'm going to get all. No, we have to understand that it's a professional level, and sometimes you gain and sometimes you don't. I remember being in a project and we were all working and we had a budget of 100,000 euros, and suddenly the budget was cut to 60,000. So we lost a lot, we lost part of the money, and then we had to decide what to lose. And we decided, our organization said, well, the artists we were going to put in the project, we're not going to put it, because if not, everybody was there, oh, I'm not going to, I want to put my artist, and somebody has to give up. And then we decide, well, right, how we do it. But there's a moment we say, well, if we want to carry on the project, so what is the goal? The goal is to do something, to reach that point, to do it. If you have to lose sometimes, it's good to then we rephrase it, we understand that this is not going to be that, but in exchange, for example, we want to do one of the activities in our event. So we make this change and not get emotionally, I don't know if you use the expression, kidnapped by your own story. And be very careful with that, you know, understand very clear what's the level, and it's professional. It's we love the work we do. It's a professional level, and we have to be very even and very cold-headed, is it called, you know, when we work.
And Patrick is making a comment about the burnouts, basically, that can you know, result from having so many things to negotiate. We're talking here about negotiating with collaborators. We're talking about knowing when to let go of, but also knowing when you have a drive and you need to go towards it because you want the project to happen, or you want the things that will result from the project to happen. Like, it's always about what am I putting into motion even with this collaboration. Sometimes it's like, yeah, we do a festival, but I'm going to take next festival as a great example of, it's also a political and territorial projects. And all of this is very subtle in some ways. I mean, it's complicated, but you can't have one without the other. You couldn't just do a very dry policy that, you know, we need the magic of art to make that happen. And of course, we like to put on festivals, so that's good for us. Clayton, you wanted to add to this?
It's actually responding to the earlier one, but it's almost this exact same response, which is that like you have to think about like onboarding into an idea and how, like, I think about some of the best times that it's worked, where someone's bringing me into a project, was having just a one-on-one discussion with someone from the project to find out what my interest level would be, to go over the big things, and then sort of when I'm getting brought into it, it's under that context of what I've said I'd be willing to do, as opposed to, you know, my first meeting being like, you know, I'm meeting with 10 other people that are working with this organization, and they all have pre-existing knowledge and a working relationship, and then all of a sudden I'm walking into it brand new. It feels like unfair bargaining, you know, and I think that that's similar to like, you know, you think about the training for how to prevent crisis. Well, like, you know, going through the motions to actually, like, especially when you're helping your staff running a digital event, being like, well, how does someone maintain control of the space, and having that, like, that everyone feels comfortable if they had to click and kick somebody out because they're you know, they're inebriated and swearing at everybody, you know, how do you go through that? And it's similar in that way of being like, you wouldn't want your staff to have to learn how to do that by doing it. You want them to be prepared, right? And this is that idea of like just foundational stuff. And then it's the same with like, you want everyone to feel like they understand the relationship and the collaboration, and they're prepared. So like that, especially with Patrick saying like unbalanced things, you know, if you're going to sit down with a large group, like you know, millions and millions of dollars, and your organization is just a couple 100,000, and then you go to a partnership meeting alone because there's probably only 1 or 2 staff in your whole group, and they show up with like their full management team, that's immediately like, how does it feel? It feels like unfair bargaining. It feels like they're showing all their cards, and you're expected to show yours. And in the end, I'm like, so you want this to be fair? Either don't bring as many people, or you've got to start putting things on the table that I'm hiring enough people that we're at that level. And you're like, no one's going to do that. But the reality of the situation is like, don't treat them as an equal when they're not financially equal. There has to be considerations and made to be like making it more about equity and like that idea of like, you know, what does the other organization need to be able to engage as an actual peer? And then if it can't happen, be realistic about how to approach it, you know, because it can't be that, you know, we're all going to put the exact same amount of money on the table, and the $1 million group, like, that's easy. The small groups, like, that's my wages, I'll just give them over, I guess.
Yeah, and so the points you're bringing up, Clayton, I think we can link them up with what Nawal is also raising in the chat. This idea of the structure needs to be healthy, for people to come into collaboration. So now I was talking about racial insensitivity in the workplace, which I would say is a symptom of lack of training, lack of equity, commitment to values of equity. So who is responsible for creating this kind of container, for hosting the collaborative structure, so that it can bring also, this is a question we touched upon a little bit earlier, how do we bring in new peers, the ones we don't know yet? Because Mike, you were saying, oh yeah, it's great to collaborate with people you've met, but what's the first step? How do we meet people? Sometimes we want to invite people to be part of these collaborations, and there's so many considerations to take into account, like what is this balance of power? How do you actually disclose it? And how do you make this a constant conversation? So it can be money, but many different levels of privilege, of ease, of access to money, etc. So yeah, Mike, you are pointing this out too, unbalancing, this question of unbalance. So how do we talk about it? How do we maybe, create this environment? Do you have, and this can be a good send-off as well for our networking, which will happen in a few minutes. So maybe as a last round, thinking about what can we do concretely when we are in charge of a collaborative vehicle? How do we continue to talk about power imbalance, value for each of the partners, what they can give, what they can get?
One of the experiences that we had when we talk about unbalancing, Clayton was talking about that, what happens if the a small event of 1-2 persons, as Patrick was saying, is linked to a major event, with millions of dollars. And that is the starting of the collaboration starts with a problem. I believe in that. That happened to us sometimes. When you want to collaborate, I think it's good to do it with events, organizations, and structures that are similar to you. Because if not, this unbalancing is very difficult then to deal with when you are, maybe I put something on the table that is a problem, but it's something that we experience is the most level. We're talking in terms of structures, for example, the more balanced they are, the better the collaboration can go, because if not, the problems will arise. The other thing is, as they were saying about all the injustice, personal, racial, all these injustices. This is a matter of knowing who you're working with, who you're dealing with, and this is why, in my belief, is before starting collaborating, meet the people, meet who are behind the structures. I think for us, we've always done it that way. And the moment we did not, there was somebody, that came as a friend of, that sometimes not knowing the people also can be a threat.
Oh, that's interesting. So let's not try to collaborate with everybody. There is a certain question of alignment of values. This is what also we've touched upon several times. You need to actually know that, yeah, you can go for the long course, and it's not just arranged marriage, essentially. That it's not just we're collaborating towards one project, one goal. It's also really the collaboration itself being an amplification of these values, and you're manifesting your belief in these values by joining forces together, spending time and efforts, and these values are also transpiring in the final project and whatever happens as a result of the project, which is really, like always, one step further. I think we could have one more consideration before doing a short conclusion. Clayton, and Clayton. Okay. So Clayton, do you want to talk about this now? Your point here, because I think this is also what we're talking about in terms of relevant to the Ontario context, right? So let's not get too bogged down with Europe, which is another world, really. Let's tackle this question. Over to you.
So I'll frame this really quickly in the context of how there's a lot of work being done acknowledging Indigenous people as the original keepers of this land, and trying to, from the government's side, come up with better relationship structures as far as resources, as far as collaborations. I don't need to get into the long history of sort of abuses that have happened, because that's all for the majority well publicly known. But in the end, I've had a lot of questions, and I just wanted to respond to everyone, because I was getting them sort of like the idea of like how to build healthier relationships, or how to get people to not feel like the starting point is exploitation when you're calling upon them, or like how to get like, and in the end, it's not simple. It's not like saying, there's this, like, there's no way to just magically bypass all of the problems that are publicly known, right? So like, you want to start a new relationship, that's what it is. Are they going to be reciprocate and want that relationship? I'm like, they probably are getting preyed upon all the time. I remember probably like 8 or 9 years ago at this point, where the Ontario Arts Council was talking about, putting some resources towards getting just the communication staff of the First Nations bands to actually like receive the press releases that were going out for Indigenous artists. And I had an intern at the Indigenous Curatorial Collective at the time working on establishing who in the offices was there to receive these things. And after a few months, we found out that it was like, I think there was only about 8 First Nations bands that had a communications staff person. So like the idea that there was all these people waiting, ready to take your message and share them with people, I'm like, the majority of the band offices were not at the point of being able to participate in that way. They did not have the capacity. And there's just these ideas of like, so if you think about, that's your local band that doesn't have a communications person, and then everybody is trying to come up with partnerships, and they're like, why is no one responding to my emails? I'm like, because they're probably sitting in a general inbox for months before it's checked, because they're just, the capacity to engage isn't there, and they're being asked too much. And that's even when they have everything. Like I think about I left the Indigenous Curatorial Collective in 2018. I think about Camille Usher, who's replaced me there, and how she says that she's solicited to engage in things all the time, and they almost have like you have to be an institutional member of their organization now, whether to take those calls, which is expensive. So it also means that like for smaller organizations to go and establish healthy programming with Indigenous people, and to have that just kind of spring into being, like, it's really, I would say, start in a relational way. Start where the community that especially your local Indigenous community, or people, if there isn't an identified First Nation or band or reserve in your area, to start to understand the proximity to who is there, and then make a plan that is a little bit more like how to start building that relationship in a healthy way, and what are the offerings that can happen, because it can go wrong. And I have so many horror stories, but I'm not gonna, I could do this whole talk on just that, and I don't want to take up that space. But anyway, just because I had a lot of people personal messaging me, I wanted to respond in that way, just so that it was like less me having to tell everyone, I'll send you direct messages after this.
That's wonderful, thank you. And I've realized that we've got a couple of slides actually to show you, to finish kind of the formal side of our